In this video, we're going to talk about how to run for the United States Senate. Few campaigns are more complicated than a U.S. Senate race. I'm going to boil it down and break it down into easy to follow steps so that you know what you need to know before you do it and how you do it once you've decided to run. Stick with me because I got a free gift at the end of this video. What we're going to cover in this video is the nature of the job. 2, how you develop a network that will carry you through the campaign. 3, how to study your state, your jurisdiction, so that you know what you need to know about the people who live there. 4, we're going to talk about how you craft a message that will carry the day. We're also going to talk about how you advertise that message and how you raise the money to pay for your campaign. And let's start with this. What is the job? You're asking to become one of the 100 most powerful people who serve in Washington. There are only 100 senators in the United States. It is an immensely powerful position. You have say-so over the entire U.S. budget, where we spend and how we spend trillions of dollars. You have some measure of influence over how the money is collected to pay for those campaign bills. You have a measure of influence over what countries are given aid by the United States. You have influence over criminal justice matters. You have influence over what treaties are approved. It is one of the most powerful positions in the country. If you have no idea what you want to do with the power that comes with that job, take some time to find out. Know a little bit about the federal budget, the difference between discretionary spending and entitlement spending. Know what you're talking about so that no matter who you're talking to in a town meeting or at a door-to-door canvassing operation or something else, that when somebody asks you a question about what problem you want to fix and what you're going to do, that you have an answer for them that makes sense. The second thing is you really need to be an expert on your state. Go back and look at past turnout. How many people normally vote in the year that you are running for the U.S. Senate? That's a pretty good barometer of how many votes you're going to need if you want to win the election. Of course, you need to know the partisan affiliation of the voters who live in your state. But there's some other things that are very helpful that if you don't know, you're going to be swimming upstream. You need a complete and total demographic profile of the people who live in your state. What is that? You need to know the age brackets of those who live in your state, the percentage of young versus old versus middle age. You need to know how many families have children in the household. You need to know the income levels of the people who live in your state, the race, the ethnicity of the people who live there, the education levels of those who live in your state, rural versus suburban versus urban. If you do not know that, you're going to spend money on things that don't matter. Your message is going to get lost, and you won't be able to micro-target some of the messaging that you need to micro-target to niche audiences if you want the job of being a U.S. Senator. Next thing, you will need a strong network of supporters, and there are 2 kinds here. One is yours, your personal network. Who do you know who has influence, who may be an opinion leader? Who do you know who could be a volunteer in your political campaign and do something useful for you at your campaign headquarters? You need to inventory that at the get-go because you will not become a U.S. Senator without the help of a lot of other people. That starts with your personal network. If you don't know that offhand, there's 3 different places you can look to at least come up with your initial list. 1, the contacts in your mobile phone. Thumb through that list and look at the people that are in there, figure out which ones know you, recognize you, and might be able to help in your political campaign. Second place is go to Facebook and look at your Facebook friends. Look for those who are influential, whose opinion matters, who could be helpful to you. You might even want to check the connections in your LinkedIn profile, because sometimes friends also end up in that one. That's the first network you need to establish. Now, there's a secondary network equally important in a race for the U.S. Senate. You may or may not know some of these people, but the point is you need to know them. Every political party has a structure in every state of the union. It's political party leadership of the party with which you are affiliated. You have a state chair, you have a state executive committee, you have county chairs that belong to your party. They're insulted if you don't talk to them. They're insulted if you don't court them. They're insulted if you don't nourish the relationship. And here's the truth about those people. You may be able to defeat them if they're all for somebody else, but your life will be a whole lot easier if at least some of them are supportive of your candidacy. You will never get that if you don't go court them. The second place to look for support are among elected officials of your party who already hold office. Whether it's a county commissioner or a state senator, here's the truth about them. They've run in an election and they have won an election. They have their own network of strong supporters. They have their own network of people who give to their political campaigns. If they open up some of their contact list to you, they can connect you with people who could be very helpful in your own campaign. They also tend to be opinion leaders and people who, when they talk, people listen. And it's very helpful to have their endorsements sometimes if you're running for the U.S. Senate. A third place to look, there are a plethora of special interest groups in this country that care deeply about who holds a U.S. Senate seat. Some of them are based in Washington. Some of them are based in your home state. Who are they? They are those who care deeply about who has the job. They are those who deserve or receive some benefit from the federal budget. They are those who are sensitive about the taxes that are paid to support that budget. In many communities, there are ministers that care deeply about who sits in a U.S. Senate seat or U.S. Senate seat. In many communities, there are ministers that care deeply about who has the job, whether your cause might be pro-life or pro-choice. I guarantee you there are organizations that care deeply about who sits in that Senate seat. Now, where do you find all of these groups that care passionately about it? Well, it's not very hard. All you got to do is go to the FEC website and look at who has contributed to past candidates in your state that have run for the United States Senate, and chances are they're going to be there in the form of a campaign contribution or an in-kind contribution. That's a good place to look for them. In addition, the candidates who are affiliated with your party will also have some idea of interest groups that matter. There are two other categories here that are important. One is people who lead service organizations in your state. The other day I was talking to someone in Georgia about who he should talk to about a future statewide race. And he'd been talking to lots of opinion leaders, and by chance our conversation was steered to community and service organizations. And I pulled up United Way in his state. And I said, take a look at the board members of United Way that have jurisdiction. They were some of the cream of the crop of the opinion leaders and influencers in that state. And he looked at them one by one and said, oh my God, these are people of enormous influence. I never even thought about it. But that is another group that you need to court, because when they talk, people tend to listen. Depending on the state where you are, you may have a very diverse mix of races and ethnicities. They also have their own special concerns. There are leaders of those groups who, when they talk, people tend to listen. They are also great avenues to the hearts and minds of people in that group if the leaders of those groups are willing to say you're a great candidate and that they ought to vote for you. The next thing you're going to need, and here's the truth about people who've been elected to the U.S. Senate, nobody has ever gotten there without a coherent and a compelling campaign message. And I'm just going to make it short, easy and simple to understand. You'll need to answer these 5 questions for voters during the course of a campaign. What makes you qualified for the job? What have you done in your life that makes you capable of doing this job? 2, what can you tell me that lets me know that your values and your priorities and your concerns are in sync with my notions of right and wrong and my values? 3, what are you going to do for me? What problems are you going to fix? What injustice will you correct? What wrong will you right? What policies are you going to pursue that will make life in this country or this state better for me and the people that I love? Things that will improve my quality of life and ease the burdens that I have. What can you tell me? What stories, some experience you had in your life, something you saw or heard that lets me know that I can trust you to make these kinds of decisions on my behalf? Ultimately, they don't say it that way, but voters want to know they can trust you. And by telling them such a story, you kind of peel back a little bit of your onion and you let them know what's deep inside. And if you got a story that conveys that, it will put you one giant leap forward, because a story like that is a great political ad in a political campaign. Finally, I'm going to mention this. It goes without saying that politics is civilized warfare. Ultimately, it's going to come down to you and perhaps one other person. Why you and not them? Why is voting for you better for your constituents than voting for the other person running against you? During the final stages of your campaign message, you need to give voters clarity and make that decision easy for them. Another thing nobody has ever done in a Senate campaign is win a race without advertising, and it will be incumbent upon you to advertise your message to certain people in your state. So how do you do that? Well, of course, there is social media. It's free, but you can't win a U.S. Senate race on social media alone. Facebook and YouTube will give you permission to advertise once you've been certified as eligible to advertise. And it is a great and inexpensive way to reach people in your state. There is also what we call digital advertising, which is another great way to put your picture and your campaign slogan and a short message on publications and newspapers, even the weather report that people look at on a daily basis. Radio is often used in races for the U.S. Senate because in certain communities, radio is this kind of the center of the universe on local news. Direct mail, or what we call persuasion mail, is commonly used in political campaigns. And most common of all are certain kinds of television. Very few people are ever elected to the U.S. Senate without advertising on commercial TV. Just in terms of bang for the buck on a commercial TV station or a commercial in what we call an area of dominant influence, the quickest way to get yourself into the TV sets of a home is with commercial advertising, evening news, and daytime programming that have a high viewership. There is also cable that you can use to supplement that, connected TV, which you can use to supplement your commercial advertising, and even OTT, over the top, which is for people who do not have a cable connection anymore. Now, all of this is a big mix. Undoubtedly, in a U.S. Senate race, most of your advertising dollars are going to be spent on commercial television. That doesn't mean you should not do the other things that I talked about, because it takes more than TV ads to win an election for U.S. Senate. 2 other things here that are vitally important. Do not run for the Senate without a budget, and that budget needs to be in writing. And because if you do not have a budget in a U.S. Senate race, you do not have a strategy. After you've totaled what you need to spend on advertising, after you've totaled what you need for headquarters staff and the warm bodies to run your operation, add it all up and figure out how much you need to win the election. Then break it out month by month, what you're going to spend and why you're going to spend it in each month leading up to that election. Now, Once you've done that, draft your fundraising plan and make sure that the money that you are bringing in matches month by month the money that you need to spend. Now, typically the way it works is candidates raise a lot of money at the outset. They kind of set that aside as part of their TV budget, and that money is kept there until the end when it's really needed as voters are making up their minds. But if you do not have a budget and you do not have a fundraising plan, I guarantee you that at some point you will run out of money, and it's a bad day when you do. Each week I set aside a little time to talk to people who are looking for help in their campaign. If you'd like to talk to me, my phone number is in the link underneath this video. It's in the description. And in addition, there is a place where you click on a link, send me your name, address, and phone number, and I'll get in touch with you to schedule a call.